Welcome to Horror in Detail. Are you ready to embark on a chilling journey into the realms of darkness? The mysterious and the bone-chilling world of horror stories. On this channel, we are dedicated to unraveling the most terrifying tales that will send shivers down your spine. First story. This story was shared by you/competitive_delay_90. The Expedition. I have always been in love with conspiracy theories back when I was young. There was something extremely intriguing about the mysterious nature of them. The mere uncertainty of whether spaceships or cryptids were real or not aroused a specific kind of curiosity in me. It made me want to go out there and find out for myself. It made me wonder whether those myths and legends were strictly fictional or whether there was in fact some truth to them. Back when I was a little kid, I used to believe everything I saw. And since my parents decided to leave me all the freedom I wanted to view anything across the web, I was able to delve into each possibly imaginable mystery. From various creepypastas to countless internet mysteries, I was engaged in everything. As I started to grow up, I realized that none of the so-called mysteries were real, at least not how I had imagined them. Hence, I ceased to be naive and left behind my guilty pleasure of researching unsolved cases that were characterized by something that was yet to be deciphered, something utterly unknown. I decided to invest my time in sports instead, and when I entered high school, I was able to make the varsity team. Time passed, and I eventually reached my junior year. School was not particularly pleasant, especially being the only black guy surrounded by a bunch of Kentucky hillbillies, but I did what I could and managed to befriend some people. In fact, I would go as far as to call myself back then popular, since I had a very easy time with girls, a fact that was supported by my presence in my school's athletic community. As a consequence, most of the people I sat at lunch with were people from my basketball team. One particular autumn day, sometime around late September or early October, I was enjoying the exquisite American cafeteria cuisine. The weather was crisp and the sun was still shining around the clock, but the leaves had started to fall to the ground, creating an enormous carpet of orange and yellow leaves that I loved to gaze at. While slurping down my watery chocolate milk, I heard my friends enter the cafeteria. "You fucked up, David. Your parents are gone. Whoop your ass like Abel's great-grandparents got their asses hooped back 200 years ago," said John, who had built a reputation for never holding anything back whatsoever, regardless of the subject matter. As the rest of the guys sat down at my lunch table, racist jokes were common, and I myself happened to find them funny, so I never objected and even laughed at them too. Man, give me a break. AC isn't even that bad. I wouldn't be talking trash if I were you and through some heavenly sent wonder got sick right the day of the exam, reproached Marcus. He was a very laid-back guy, and someone who I felt genuinely liked me as a friend. Every time we hung out, I knew he acted a certain way towards me because that was naturally his way of being, whereas I could tell that the others were stuck into prejudice from time to time. "Did Mrs. Croft display the results?" I inquired. "As always, you got A, B, if I'm not mistaken," reported Marcus. I was content with the feedback, because I never really tried hard academically, to be frank. As long as I passed, I didn't care about getting exceptional grades or moving on to study at a prestigious college. This was mostly due to me relying on sports to get me a scholarship. I didn't really care which one, as long as I could play basketball and get my degree. A few minutes into our deeply philosophical debates regarding the butts of the girls in our grade, Marcus mentioned something Mrs. Croft had pointed out earlier in the day, which I omitted as I was clearly too concerned with playing web games on my Chromebook. "We're going to Indianapolis next week. It's supposed to be some school expedition for educational purposes or some shit of that sort, I guess." "What the fuck are we going to learn from driving across cornfields and barns for a couple of days?" asked John in his typically unapologetic manner. "You act as if Kentucky is some place covered by skyscrapers and highways. To me, it's just a couple of days without school, and I'd take no school over school every single day in the calendar," said Marcus. Suddenly, I felt as if something struck me. Indiana, I thought. Immediately, I remembered hearing about something in the news a few days ago. "I heard there's some sketchy stuff going on over there," I pointed out. "I saw it on the TV earlier this week." 3 die in human sacrifice. Police suspect a murderous group to be on the run. The whole lunch table broke out in laughter. Seems to me like Buddy has mistaken Indiana for India or something. I don't know what news you watched, but the most dangerous thing you'll find in Indiana are the farmers that'll threaten you with a gauge if you lay a foot on their property, and maybe a few cows if you're lucky enough to find any. John argued as he was openly ridiculing me. Fast forward a few days, and I'm waiting with my classmates in the school parking lot for the school bus to come. Our teacher is counting us, making sure everyone is present. To this day, I still don't know who thought it would be a good idea to put 70 sweaty teenagers together in a bus without air conditioning. Add to this that the bus was nearly in shambles, as our school district couldn't afford a new one, and the fact that it was shaking worse than a southerner that goes up to New York for the first time, and you end up with a recipe for disaster. Not to mention that the drive was about 4 hours long. We all give our horrendous attempts at what I will call freestyle rap in the back of the bus and listen to music on the speakers. Some of the guys try to get something going with the girls, but all we can do is hold back our laughter as we watch them fail horribly. Everything that could happen on that bus would happen. We were just trying to keep ourselves entertained. Right upon exiting Louisville, maybe 20 to 30 miles into Indiana territory, my sleep gets disrupted by a brusque break, and I can feel my stomach moving up my thorax from the shock my body absorbed upon being propulsed in the air. What the hell happened? I asked, my eyes blinded by the afternoon sun. Fucking redneck roads, that's what happened. I hear someone from the left side mutter. The bus driver pulls up to the right, gets out of the bus, and takes a quick look at it. I experienced that uncomfortable feeling when you know some bad news is about to be announced, but everyone in the room is still possessed by a visible glimmer of hope. We popped a tire. We'll have to call a tow truck, pointed out the driver who, despite being a woman, looked like a 250 pounds NFL linebacker. The dissatisfaction was written all over the students' faces, but there was really nothing we could do about it at that time but wait. We fool around, pass the time, but no tow truck shows up. The sun begins to set and everyone is obviously distressed. Luckily for us, there was a motel a couple hundred yards off the spot we stopped at on the highway. The school district financed the whole trip, and to be honest, it was just fair of them to at least give us a place to sleep after making us ride over here in that abomination of a bus that was clearly beyond obsolete. After walking for around 5 minutes, we arrived at the motel. The teacher makes the basic rules clear. No boys in the girls' rooms and vice versa. No alcohol or cigarettes, no smoking pot. We assumed we would have to get squished in those rooms, since we were so many, but it turned out that there were just enough rooms to house 4 people per free space. I group up with John and Marcus, and we'd taken another guy, Donnie. I only knew him because we had a few classes together, but besides that we did not really interact a lot. He also turned out to be very temperamental and would get angry very easily, so I tried to avoid him as much as I could. In any case, John and Donnie decide to go down to the gas station to convince someone there to get beers for them. In the meantime, I'm stuck in the room with Marcus. It was not a particularly eventful evening, so I decided to turn on the TV. No signal. For some reason that made me feel uneasy. I go out on the balcony and I'm immediately hit by a revolting smell of burnt metal. I could not tell which type of metal, perhaps copper or iron, but what I could tell was that it was making me dizzy. There were some guys in the room next to ours that shared a balcony with us, but they did not seem concerned even to the slightest. Why was I the only one smelling it? I go back inside and feel increasingly more stressed for some reason I could not make out. I tried to convince myself that I simply had a long day, but the lie was in vain since I had not even an ounce of tiredness in me. I go out on the balcony again and stir up a conversation with our neighbors. The smell seemed to have gone, or at the very least faded a little. By then it was already dark and all you could see was a thin, yellowish line stretching out across the horizon. John and Donnie had returned by the time I went back into our room. As I suspected, their attempt was a big failure. Being unsuccessful might have been the catalyst for them coming up with an alternative idea for an adventure. When it gets pitch black, we sneak out. Proposes Donnie. Are you out of your fucking mind? I thought you didn't manage to buy those beers, but by the look of it you gulped them all down right away. Rebuked Marcus. I understood him. Our teacher was not the type of person you would like to get into trouble with. She was perhaps the most vengeful person I knew, and the plain thought of her calling our parents made me agree with him even more. I didn't know you turned into a pussy right after we crossed the border to Indiana. Must be the air of the Midwest or something. John revolted. It's simple. We get some of the guys from the other rooms together, and we wait until midnight. Then we sneak out of the back door in the janitor's room. When we arrived, we had seen the janitor leave through a door at the back of the parking lot. So we figured that since there is a back door that leads out, then there must be a door on the inside that leads inside the janitor's room. Indeed, as we entered, I was able to make out a gray door that was right at the other end of the hallway beneath our room, right next to the shabby elevator. If we hurried, no one would notice. After about half an hour of arguing, considering the fact that we were bored to hell after spending that afternoon in the motel, we agreed to sneak out into the woods. I knew it was a stupid plan, and I knew we did not have the vaguest idea of what we were going to do in the woods, but there was something about the whole thing that got me invested. Perhaps the nostalgia of my early years of internet research on humanoid entities living in the forest got the best of me. I was determined to go out there, and most importantly, I was ready to get scared. A few cans of Dr. Pepper later, we slowly crawled to the room next door, since the creaky floor was too noisy for us to be walking on it. After knocking for about 5 minutes and trying to convince the others that we were not Mrs. Croft, they let us in. John explains our plan to them, and they all seem just as aroused by the idea as the rest of us, besides Marcus, who let himself be persuaded just so he did not have to spend the night alone listening to the radio. At this point, we were about 9 guys. We open the door carefully and again make our way to the elevator, emulating a herd of sheep, something not particularly uncommon to the town of nowhere we were stationed at. About 10 yards away from the elevator, I hear a female voice inquire, "What the hell are you doing here this late?" My heart sank for a moment. I thought of how dumb we were for listening to Donnie's idiotic plan. I turn around and, hit by a feeling of relief, I see Becky, a girl in my math class, standing there and staring at us. We explain our situation to her, and she wants to come with us, despite still wearing her pajamas. After running over a couple of buckets in the janitor's storage, we found the backup key, and we took it with us so we could enter when we were going to return. A putrid fragrance hit my nostrils as we exited the building. It was not the same as before, but a rather moldy, smoky one. Despite my instincts pleading me to stay at the motel, I keep going. We find an entrance to the woods that one of the guys illuminates with a flashlight. Our trip was a lot less creepy than I had imagined, since we were so many and we had a bright source of light. It felt more like a relaxing evening walk. Everyone else could agree with that, so we decided to go off the narrow path and are now walking through every kind of bush and tree imaginable. Subsequently, we find a log that we all sit on, as if collectively telling each other that we should go back. We were maybe half an hour deep into the woods and our situation started to feel like a Grimm's fairy tale. But as we were all quiet, I noticed some mumbling coming out of the side of the woods left to me. It got increasingly louder to the point where everyone else could hear it. "It's probably just an animal, let's get out of here," implored Becky, who was visibly tired and scared. The guys convinced her to go and check it out, maybe take a picture and leave. We moved towards where the sound originally came from. At some point, I could see something that seemed to look like a campfire. "Turn off the flashlight, you bum," whispered one of the other guys. Then we approach and I can see a big wooden structure that was surrounded by a ring of fire, which was probably made with gasoline or alcohol. We might just have found the gingerbread house, I thought. We stayed ducked behind some leaves and roots of some bigger trees. Meanwhile, Becky was upset. "I told you we should have just gone back." "Shut up and stop whining like a little kid," answered John. Right then we see a group of people holding hands and forming a big circle. They were wearing some garments that resembled Puritan clothing, but a lot more modest and very awkwardly put together. Some of the women had bruised up faces. What I found interesting was the way they were arranged in that circle. There were significantly more women than men, and the men who were part of the circle had some women match their clothes in some way or another. Some had matching scarves, others had the color of their pants matched with the color of the women's dresses. Besides a few barrels that were positioned right next to the ring of fire, there was no other visible object that was observable. One detail I remember is the symbol engraved on the wooden statue. It was a peasant cutting open his hand and feeding the blood to a snake. The statue did not take any specific form. It was not a person, it was not an animal. It seemed much more like the silhouette of a primate that got its tail and ears cut off and had all of its facial and bodily features removed. What branch of the KKK is this? I don't know, but whatever they want from us, they can take Abel and let us go, answered John, trying to prove his comedic aptitudes when we were obviously witnessing some sort of ritual. It's not the time for your funny jokes, fuckface. Let's roll out of here, replied Marcus. The people around the statue began passing a needle that everyone had to pierce the tips of their fingers with. Then they would press them on the fingertips of the person next to them until the circle was closed. You always think you're better than me because you were born a few inches taller and you get more playing time during the game. Now you think you can boss me around? I'll show you and those Amish bastards what it means to make your own rules, said John as he quickly got up and revealed himself to the people in the circle. Marcus tried to grab his foot, but it was already too late. Working hard but hardly working. Huh? Interrogated John as he was approaching the people with his arms wide open and a gross smile printed on his lips. The men said something in a language I couldn't make out. I thought it was German, but it sounded too scratchy, even for German standards. One of them walks towards the barrel. He digs his hand into it and rapidly grabs a loaded shotgun. The expression on John's face, at least as far as I could recognize it from the light of the fire that lightly shone on it, went from pride to anguish. I come in peace, I swear. Look, we can talk. I have something for Y-. A loud, banging explosion interrupted what was going to be John's last words. The mush that once was his brain was now splattered all throughout the area 6 feet behind him, making a sound that was similar to raindrops hitting the leaves and grass on the floor. Consequently, the lifeless body fell to the ground, from where it was picked up by one of the men and carried inside the circle. Everybody stay down, don't make a fucking sound, I whispered while doing my best to cover Becky's mouth with my hand. She was crying uncontrollably and nearly suffocating. Her red, steamy face and the teardrops falling down her cheeks like a river wet my hand and made it slippery. I looked over and saw the people bring out some kind of instrument from inside the barrel. It looked like a cork opener, but bigger, with sharper edges. A man with a long, brown beard grabbed John's carcass and started to screw the device right into his chest. I could hear the bones of his ribs crack like sticks. Another man brought an additional tool, something that looked like a rusty, giant forceps. He inserted it into the freshly crafted cavity and started to spread his rib cage in two. The sound reminded me of the sound a watermelon makes when you cut it open partially and split the rest of the opening apart with your hands, as I was listening in agony. The men, and now also women, started digging into his body, before eventually setting it on fire. Everyone wanted to just run away, but we couldn't move until they were gone because we knew they had a gun and could do the same to us that they did to John without too much effort. After what felt like a few hours later, and was in reality a few minutes, the people set their statue on fire as well and took their barrels. As soon as we knew we were free to go, we sprinted away from the site. I do not know where we ran or how we did not fall flat on our faces from being in the woods at 2 a.m. in the night, but eventually we reached some outskirts and tried to find the closest police station. My phone has a signal again, so I look it up, and it is just 1,000 feet away from us. We try to explain the situation to the officers, and it turns out the teacher already called in because she noticed we were missing. We were all traumatized. The cops went on a search the following day and indeed found the site we had reported seeing. They had found some of John's cremated remains as well. I could simply not believe that what just happened was real. I thought I was still at the back of the bus, deep in my slumber as we got towed away to the nearest repair shop where our bus could be fixed. The expedition did obviously not take place any further, but one thing is certain, I will never forget that night. I am not afraid of the unknown, because I am not afraid to die. I don't blame our curious young nature at that time, but I blamed John's quick temper and pride that made him prove himself in front of all of us. After the incident, I did not speak much to any of the guys that were with me that night. Marcus left the basketball team and eventually transferred schools. He holds himself accountable for John's death to this day. The next time you try to show someone how great and fabulous you are, perhaps think twice. There is no need to prove to anyone else what they already know, namely that you are insecure about yourself. Second story. This story was shared by you/the poet soldier. My name is Hattie Fur, and I am an only child. Jesus, I hope this doesn't get turned into a TikTok with Subway Surfers content playing in the background. I can't imagine what would happen if one of these things saw this through their social media feed and reset me. I apologize, but I don't really know how to start one of these things off. Everyone here seems to be so certain of themselves when talking about their horrific experiences here, and I've typed up 7 separate options for the introduction and discarded all of them. What am I even supposed to say? Am I the asshole for not believing murderous cryptids when they tell me I'm their sibling? The thing is, I wasn't always an only child. Years before the things found me, I had a brother and sister. They were twins and always at each other's throats. I was the youngest by 9 years and found myself caught in the crossfire between the two of them more often than not. They went off to college when I was 6 due to some sort of early graduation program. My mom was in despair after they left. She had always felt closer to the two of them, as they had been closer in age to her and enjoyed writing as much as she did. I guess having a math nerd as a child when you're a famous author is disappointing. If my dad was upset, he didn't show it. He's a traditional man and thinks that he's responsible for providing for the family even though my mom makes more than enough for all 5 of us. He's constantly on trips, and so the two of us never grew close. My relationship with them got worse after the accident. I had blown up at both of my siblings because 11-year-old me didn't think she was getting enough attention from our family. They tried to push it off at first, claiming that I was just being the attention-seeking youngest. And then I stopped talking. It wasn't a silent treatment, but that's what they saw it as. For some reason, I had become mute or nonverbal. I have no idea how to distinguish one from another without a doctor's diagnosis, sometime after the argument. My parents brushed it off for a few days, but when school continued and I still wasn't speaking, they grew concerned. They had my siblings come home and told me that we would all talk it out and spend some time together. My parents had grown frustrated when I didn't speak even when they came home, and told my siblings to leave as to not encourage me further. For probably the first time in their lives, they agreed on something. My sister's car broke down, and so they both took my brother's car back to the college. We learned that they died about 5 hours later. They apparently both stopped to get some drinks in order to de-stress after the argument and had gotten into an accident not a mile from the bar. My parents never admitted to blaming me, but they didn't try to hide how they felt, either. My mom hit a writer's block soon after that, which my dad used as an excuse to go on business trips. We all knew he just wanted to get away from Kate and Neil's ghosts. But my family trauma isn't what I'm here to discuss. This all had to do with the phone call I got a year ago. I was about to turn 16 at the time, and had assumed that the phone call I received was a birthday call from some distant family member that had taken pity on me. My siblings sang happy birthday to me for the first time. I panicked, before realizing that someone from my school likely programmed AI voices to creep me out, as I wasn't exactly well-liked. I was pissed off, though, and decided to snap at them. I don't know who the hell you are, but if you think that this is going to upset me, you're wrong. Your shitty AI doesn't quite capture their pretentious tones. And if this is Maddie on the other end of the line, I hope that you also receive the pleasure of having your asshole siblings die. I snapped. I know now how absolutely pitiful it sounds, but I was still in shock from hearing their voices and could hardly keep my voice from shaking. Instead of whoever it was on the other end of the line laughing or hanging up, they bickered amongst themselves. Their voices initially sounded like my siblings, but abruptly changed to 2 very different sounding people. I was only able to make out a few phrases, but I'll record them here anyways in case I'm reset. Asshole siblings dash. They could just be saying that to make us hang up. It should have charmed her. You can try tomorrow. Forget. Just reset her. She isn't ready for that. Fine. Wait. Give Dad. I was very close to hanging up when I heard my dad's voice. I was suspicious of this being yet another AI at first, but he comforted me and told me that there were kids playing around with the technology at his job. They had, apparently, heard that it was my birthday and decided to use the first voices in his phone to surprise me, unknowing of the damage they had caused. It still didn't explain why they had called him Dad. Unless, of course, he had a long-standing affair with another woman. I didn't care enough to do anything about it, but I did wonder if that would be enough to get the two of them to finally divorce with one another. Do you know these kids? I asked, attempting to keep my tone light. I knew that he wasn't going to confess, but wanted to mess with him anyway. I was, as many rising freshmen are, very spiteful. My dad, unsurprisingly, hesitated. They are some close family members. I do hope you can forgive them. They're hoping to see you soon. You know, I've told them all about you. I was thinking that we could all five go to that new library they've just built. The two of them are real book nerds, just like you, he said, laughing. I sat there, absolutely dumbfounded for a moment. There was no way that he had the gall to do something like that if those kids were my half-siblings. Looking forward to it, I said, before hanging up. Everything about that conversation felt unnatural, but I didn't feel like looking into it too much. My dad and mom could deal with each other. I'd already done enough to improve the quality of our family dynamic. I didn't realize that I had spoken. It felt so natural, and I remember my voice being completely clear, as if I had never stopped speaking at all. I believe that this was my first mistake, but knowing these things I could have messed up long before it. I decided to go to sleep. As my dad had promised that he would be home the next morning, and my mom was fussing over her latest project. Apparently, a burst of inspiration had struck her a few hours ago, which I wasn't about to discourage. Hopefully it would tone down her moping. Not being concerned when my alarm clock didn't work the next morning may have been my second mistake, because when I came downstairs at 10 o'clock my dad was sitting at the table with two teenagers. Two twin boys, one with slicked back hair and calculating eyes, and the other who looked like he hadn't brushed his hair in years. I decided to head back upstairs, as I could only assume that this all had something to do with my dad's work in some way. I hadn't gotten 3 steps up the stairs when he called me downstairs. I sighed and entered the room. Apparently, him not ignoring me wasn't a one-time thing. This was going to be a pain to deal with. I looked at the two boys with suspicion. They did not seem old enough to be working with my father. Oh, Hattie, I should have introduced you to these two. These are your cousins, William and Arlo. The more serious-looking cousin smiled coolly and clarified that he was Arlo. William sat by him, happily swinging his feet like some sort of overstimulated toddler. I looked at the two of them, deciding on whether or not I wanted to mess with my dad despite the kindness he had been showing this past day. A day doesn't make up for 15 years, I decided, and dug my heels into this conversation. Hopefully I can get the two of them out of here before lunch. Dad, I don't remember you mentioning any cousins to me, I said, giving him a shit-eating grin. I wasn't sure if the two of them were in on whatever he was doing, but I became more sure that they were when they exchanged a nervous glance with one another. My dad looked at me, perplexed. Of course you remember them. I used to tell you about them all the time. They just couldn't afford to visit us then, and your mother didn't like to travel. Don't you remember calling them all of the time? You thought that they were the coolest people in the world, even though they were only 3 years older than you, he said. I paused for a moment, wondering if he was aware of the bullshit he was currently spewing out. It was Neil that didn't like to travel, I said. I saw the two cousins flinch. That seemed less suspicious to me, as they likely knew now that they had accidentally prank-called me using the voices of my dead siblings. Neil? My dad asked, seeming perplexed. I was just about to snap at him for not remembering something so crucial about one of his children when Arlo grabbed me by the wrist. Don't you have to be at work? He asked my dad. I know Hattie has a day off of school, but your work started an hour ago. You should hurry and leave. I don't know what happened to my dad in that moment, but he seemed to look far too afraid for a man who was only late for look. He practically sprinted out of the door before William called out to him. Not going to say goodbye to your favorite daughter? He asked with an easy smile. My dad spun around, wishing me well and hugging me for the first time in years. He glanced at my cousin, who nodded, before leaving. Arlo's hand was back on my wrist. It must have let go when I was hugging my dad. He squeezed his hand. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be comforting or not, but William's smile put me at ease. I'm surprised that you don't remember us at all, Hattie. We just slept over at your house a few weeks ago, remember? He asked, his hold on my hand becoming more forceful. I wasn't sure why he was doing it, but it made me uneasy enough that I nodded my head in agreement despite the fact that I had never seen this kid before. I'm sorry. My memory tends to be a bit fuzzy since everything happened with my siblings. I think I remember you guys now, I said, smiling sheepishly. William seemed overjoyed with this response, and Arlo loosened the pressure on my wrist. I allowed myself to relax a little bit. My family were never big travelers with how Neil was in planes. Maybe people where they were often expressed themselves like this. I didn't like the way his finger rested over the veins of my wrist, as if he was checking my pulse. It was making me feel dizzy. I shook myself out of the suspicion. Maybe it was a tradition where they were from, and I was being a xenophobic asshole. Arlo studied my expression. I tried to school it into something more neutral. I didn't think you had siblings, Hattie, he said, his voice oddly melodic. I felt a sensation of calm run through my body, though I'm not sure why. I relaxed and gave him a smile. Oh, my apologies, you're right, I said before I had realized the words I had spoken. I went to correct myself and clarify that I did have siblings, and that they just happened to be underground, but decided against it. Who cared about Neil and my other brother? Yes, right. I had two brothers who passed, Neil and Wilbur. I felt a pang of guilt for forgetting about them so easily. William gave me a reassuring smile before telling Arlo to release my wrist. He did, surprisingly, and my thoughts became more distinct. The shithead was probably cutting off my circulation. My ears began to ring. Was that a symptom of bad circulation? I wasn't sure. I had never been interested in science. I was far more inclined to writing. Do we have her, Arlo? He asked softly. Arlo nodded with a satisfied hum, which made William's never-ending smile brighten even more. I wished that I could be on whatever this guy was. He seemed like a little ball of sunshine despite the fact that he was easily 17. They were more difficult than the others. The parents were too distant from their child to reform them as a unit. We'll have to take more care when processing her if we want to keep her mind open to future transfers, Arlo said, looking at me as if I was some sort of specimen that a child had pinned to their bug collection project. I shifted under the weight of his gaze. Sorry, I'm not following this conversation. If this is a personal conversation, I can give you guys some privacy, I offered, hoping to get out of the room as politely as possible. If my dad was willing to be so kind to me just to prove something to these cousins, I could only imagine what would happen if I severed relationships with them. William let out an audible gasp before steeling himself. Arlo took a step closer to me. Definitely not the right choice on my behalf. Fuck, I thought, praying that I could salvage the situation. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. I just didn't want to intrude on your conversation if it was, I started to say, before William interrupted me. He looked like I had kicked his puppy. I thought you couldn't hear us, he muttered, his smile fading. I shook my head. Oh, my ears were ringing if that's what you meant. But I feel fine. If you need me to go, then. I could feel the room darkening around me. I heard William call out to Arlo, who only acknowledged him with a distant hum. I didn't realize that I was falling until a pair of arms caught me, holding me with all of the care of a Vivo tester. I tried to open my eyes, and was met with two glowing lights shaped oddly like eyes. I was surely hallucinating. My desire to stay awake faded with this revelation. My brothers would surely take me to the hospital. I resigned myself to unconsciousness. Not being concerned when my alarm clock didn't work the next morning must have been a mistake, because when I came downstairs at 10 o'clock my dad was sitting at the table with two teenagers. Two twin boys, one with slicked back hair and calculating eyes, and the other who looked like he hadn't groomed himself in years. I decided to head back upstairs, as I could only assume that this all had something to do with my dad's work in some way. I hadn't gotten 3 steps up the stairs when he called me downstairs. I sighed and entered the room. Apparently, him not ignoring me wasn't a one-time thing. This was going to be a pain to deal with. I looked at the 2 boys with suspicion. They did not seem old enough to be working with my father. "Aren't you going to say hello to your brothers?" he asked me, and I looked over to the 2 boys sitting up at the counter. I had never seen them before and was unsure of what my father was hinting at. I waved at the 2 of them shyly and became even more confused when the look on both of their faces brightened significantly, as if I was some sort of celebrity. "Sorry, do I know you 2? I asked, trying to recall where I may have seen the 2 of them before. I felt something on the edge of my memory, but I couldn't quite grasp it. If I had seen them before, it wasn't recent. My dad laughed. He hadn't done that in years. "You and your practical jokes, Hattie. I have to head off to work, but I'll see you 3 later," he said, ruffling William's hair before walking out of the door. The air became noticeably colder when the garage door shut. "William," Arlo said, sounding perplexed. William looked at him and nodded, though he didn't seem happy. I hoped that I hadn't offended him. "You're a pretty tough one, aren't you?" Arlo asked, grabbing my wrist. I recoiled without thinking, unsure of what I had done wrong. He looked infuriated. "I'm sorry," I asked, intending for it to sound like an apology, but instead turning it into a question. William sighed. I think that I noticed how absolutely fucked I was when the stranger placed his finger over my wrist, feeling my pulse. Someone had done it before, and though I wasn't sure who it was, I knew that it wasn't a particularly safe person. "She isn't aware, but she didn't set it up correctly," Arlo muttered. "I guess we ought to reset again." He looked cold and cruel, so much so that I tried to withdraw my hand. A wave of dizziness hit me upon the attempt, and the darkness clouding my vision gave me a terrible feeling of déjà vu. 2 red lights, and this time I was not unwell enough to doubt what I was seeing. Arlo looked sickly, inhumanly so. I tried to right myself in order to help my brother. "She seems to be accepting it," William commented, seemingly oddly optimistic for a person whose twin had turned a sickly pale shade, his eyes glowing. "Not enough," Arlo said stubbornly, causing William to laugh. Arlo smiled. A liquid that I could only assume to be blood coated his all-too-sharp teeth. Something was wrong with my brother, and I wasn't sure if I should help him or run. I looked around, unsure of what to do, and caught something odd in my peripheral vision. My hands were coated in blood. It was so clotted that instead of dripping off of my hands, it fell off in clumsy chunks onto the kitchen floor. I tried to scream and found myself unable to make noise. Was I awake? "Quit taunting the child, Arlo," William said sternly, and the blood faded. Arlo looked healthier too, much to my relief. Needed to scare her before I reset. "It speeds things up. I learned from the best," he said, grinning cockily. Not being concerned when my alarm clock didn't work the next morning was likely the best thing that could have happened to me. I looked down at my hands, which were pristine. Too pristine, in fact. I could feel the phantom feeling of warm, thick liquid coating it. Blood. I shook my head. I was being dramatic, a right reserved to my mother and her books. I had never been one to write or read. Why had my dad called me a book nerd, then? I felt my fear before I understood it. I didn't like books, and I didn't read. I was a calculated mathematician, taking Calculus 2 in the 10th grade despite the fact that I was nearly failing my on-level English class. My dad hadn't tried to get me into reading since my siblings had died. I heard voices downstairs. 2 young teens, about the same age as my siblings had been when the accident had happened. The accident. I didn't have siblings, a fact which felt unnatural to me. I wasn't sure what was going on, but my gut was telling me that going downstairs was not a good idea. I didn't understand until I heard William tell my dad that he was going to wake up his sister. I remember, now. It hit me when I was pretending to be asleep, acting content enough to make that poor bastard's spineless self hesitate before leaving the room. I nearly screamed and ended up turning around in my sleep because I couldn't bear to be facing away from Arlo's brother. I was glad that Arlo hadn't waken me up. If that freak had checked me for my pulse, he would have known that I was not only awake, but aware of what he was. I don't know how long I have until they come up here to wake me up again. I do not know how time works with these things works, but I hope that I will be able to regain my memories if I see this post after another reset. Third story. This story was shared by you/the_misery_man. I made my Xbox wishlist public. Now, something is stalking me. Did you know you can make your wishlist on your Xbox public? It was the first time I had noticed the option a couple of weeks ago. I guess it made sense. You can make your wishlist public, and then anyone could look at it and buy you a game as a gift or something. I'm a lonely person who doesn't really have any friends. I live with my mom in a 3-story apartment where I spend most of my time on the bottom floor in my room playing video games on my Xbox One. So, when I was bored and I was flicking through the Microsoft Store, I noticed the option to make my wishlist public and thought, hey, why not? It was one of those small opening up moments where I think that I am making some first step to opening up to others and getting out of the isolated cocoon room I called home. But in reality, I really wasn't. I have almost always struggled to make friends, and the last time I had anyone I considered a friend, I was still in secondary school. Now, I am in my early 20s and have no one outside of my family I could truly call a friend. This isn't me opening up to the world or anything like that. This is me warning anyone who might read this. Then that was it. I simply made my wishlist public and I thought no more of it. Why should it matter? No one would bother looking at it. And if anyone did, why would they care? Then, about a week later, out of the blue, I received a redeem code for one of the games on my wishlist from someone as a gift. It was one of the £70 to £80 games on my wishlist, one of the ones which I was waiting to go on sale before buying. I am quite a cheapskate when it comes down to buying any games on Xbox. The gamertag was Fiend900, you know, the usual gamertag of someone who just got their profile and hadn't tailored their gamertag to their liking. I just assumed it was an accident and messaged back telling him that he accidentally gifted me a game for quite a lot of money. Almost seconds later, he messaged me back simply, take it. Nothing else, take it. Like it was no big deal. Though looking back, I think it was more of a command than a here, take this. What else could I do? There would have been no way that could have been a mistake. He literally told me to take it. Fuck. I regret that. Maybe even more than making my wishlist public in the first place. At the time, I assumed it was some kind of giveaway, like you see those streamers do. I don't watch any streams or giveaway channels. I thought then that was it. Though it was worth making my wishlist public, it did get me a rather of my budget game I wanted. But then he just kept giving me games over the next few days. Even weirder, he would occasionally attach messages that criticized the games, or more specifically, me for playing those games. They were quite creative criticisms, criticizing the low-budget graphics, the repetitive gameplay, and such. Though, they felt aimed at me. One I can remember was like, huh, you really like wasting your time on this long, boring game? Get a life. Or, really, this game? Do you really expand your gaming experience with this one? There are so many games you already have that are like this one. Grow up. I half expected him to swear in his messages, but I guess he can't. When I was tired of his sarky remarks, I finally decided to message him back asking why he was being so judgmental of the games I played. He replied, you are the one wishing for these games on your dumb little list. You are the one who chooses to waste your life on these fictional, fanboy games designed to drain your wallet. You are calling the shots. You should expect criticism, or something like that. I couldn't argue with him, of course, but I was still confused why he was doing this in the first place. I asked him, and he said he was just being nice. Said, do you not want these games? I don't understand. I was just being nice. I also couldn't argue with that. He bought me my games, and I just accepted them without even a thank you. He felt too mean to thank, yet I couldn't help but feel he might be lonely. It's strange to think that now, but I did back then. To me, Fiend was just some lonely, rich kid who only wanted attention. Well, he had gotten his attention, but thinking this didn't stop me from being upset by his retorts. I decided to look at his Xbox profile. I was shocked to see nothing. He had played no games, had no followers, no friends, no numerical gamer score of playing anything. Nothing. It was as though he just made the profile. Looking back, he must have made it about a week ago. I just felt bad for him, Perhaps I shouldn't have. He could have made the profile just to mess with me somehow, or even go as far as scam me in some way. But I couldn't help but feel he was some new kid who hadn't made any friends where he lived and had just discovered Xbox for the first time ever. What else could I think? Another week passed, and Fiend had bought me all of the games on my wish list. He must have spent about £300. I mean, none of the games he got me were on sale at the time. Who does this? But if I am being completely honest, I did not question it at all. I wish I did. I was going to try and thank him in some sort of way. I was going to ask whether he wanted to play a game with me. Not any he had gifted me. He didn't have any. He didn't seem to like them, and they are mainly single-player games anyway. So I was going to ask whether he would want to play Overwatch 2, or maybe I could reinstall Fortnite, a game he can play for free. But then as I was composing the message, like he knew what I was doing, he messaged me. It was the weirdest message so far, and I don't think I will ever forget it. It simply read, "I have given you what you value. Now, you owe me." I was like, what the actual fuck? The message was so different from any other messages he had sent me. You owe me. What did that mean? So, I replied, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you wanted something in return. Perhaps you could refund some of the games you have given me. I was trying to sound formal and polite. I had stumbled into something deeper than I had thought, and he was clearly agitated. Though he couldn't refund most of the earlier games he had given me because I had already redeemed them, he could still refund some of the later games, the 2 or 3 I hadn't redeemed yet. Little did I know then, the next message was even weirder. He said, "No, you belong to me." I chuckled at this one. It sounded oddly sexual. He had the wrong impression of me, so I messaged, "Okay, I don't know what you were thinking, but I am not interested in you in that way. I don't even know who you are. I'm sorry." I did realize how harsh that sounded, but I had to stand up for myself in a mature and adult fashion. He couldn't treat me like this. He repeated, "You belong to me." Was he not getting the message? "Listen, you seem like a nice person, but I do not know you. I am sorry. You belong to me." That's enough. Stop it. Or I am going to block you. You belong to me. It was getting creepy. No matter what I messaged, he would just say, "You belong to me." So, I blocked him. Though it did seem to take a while, not sure why, but my console was whirling noisily and getting very hot. Like when it boots up a demanding game. I ignored it. Then, I reported him and simply said he was being creepy and toxic. I moved on, and that was that, at least for the rest of that day. I will remember the next day until I die. That morning was on a weekday, so I had to get up early in the morning to go to work. I get up at 6 a.m., and I am always the first to wake in the apartment. I did what I do every morning. I cleaned my teeth, got dressed, and got ready to go. I noticed I had left my Xbox on overnight. I don't think I had ever done that before, but it didn't matter. I turned it off. Before I leave every morning, I would open the blinds. Not to see anything, but so me and my mom, don't look antisocial to people passing by. Though that morning, I did see something. It was only there for a split second, yet I could have sworn I saw a naked, pale figure on the other side of the road, dashing off out of view. It was like it was trying not to be seen by me, like it was looking over and, as though it somehow knew I was opening the blinds, it ran off. So when I saw it, I gasped and a second later looked down the road to see who it was. Outside our apartment, you can see across the road with the only closest turn off the pathway on the opposite side being about 10 meters away. It was gone. Somehow, it got out of sight within a single second. Whether or not it turned around that corner to get out of sight, I will never know. There was nowhere else it could have gone. Though it made me jump at the time, I had to move on with my day. So, I chalked it up to a jogger running past. They do that in my town early in the morning. Or my imagination, and I moved on, forgetting all about it. Well, I didn't forget about it. How could I? I had never seen anything like it before. It didn't help that at work, I was listening to horror podcasts, most of which had pale, figured cryptids in them. On my way home, I had that really strong feeling that someone, or something, was following me. This wasn't uncommon for me, when it was dark and uncrowded, but it was broad daylight and in the center of the town market. It's not like I saw anything to give me that feeling. I just had that feeling. I got home and once again my Xbox was on. I distinctly remembered turning it off this time. Perhaps something brushed past the power button and turned it on. Like any Xbox One or 360 that happens from time to time. But what could have brushed up against the button? My mom doesn't go into my room without my knowledge. At least I strongly believe that she doesn't. Nothing could have stirred in my room enough to power on my console by accident. This reminded me of Fiend and our last chat. This was the first time I connected the strange figure from that morning to Fiend, though the idea that they were connected stressed me out too much to seriously consider. I powered down my console and unplugged it. Nothing felt wrong again until about 10 o'clock. I was watching YouTube on my laptop. Markiplier was doing one of his "It's Behind You" bits in a 3 Scary Games video, the cheesy, stupid humor that keeps me working all day. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something felt like it was behind me. Like, maybe the room got colder by half a degree, or I could faintly smell the salt of someone sweating in the room. I honestly don't know. I could just feel it. Like when something has been removed from your room, even though you weren't even conscious of that thing being there in the first place, and yet, you can just tell something is missing. I spent the next half an hour looking at the screen for a minute or two, and then glancing behind myself, seeing nothing. Eventually, I paused the video I was watching and surveyed my room from my chair, spinning as a satellite dish would. I think it was only for about 10 seconds, though it felt a lot longer. Looking and looking again to confirm and reconfirm that I was alone in my room. I even closed my eyes occasionally to try and hear anything in my room. When I was satisfied, I turned back to my screen. It was right there, right behind me, off the reflection of the darker side of my laptop screen, in the corner of my eye, saved as a screenshot in my brain forever, the same being looking in through my window that morning, drifting out of view. From what I could see more clearly this time, it wasn't human. The skin was far too pale, more the skin of a corpse than anything else. Not that it was a corpse in any sense, it was just the skin wrapped so tightly around its frame. Like a skinwalker would wear the skin of a person, yet this thing's skin was wrapped so tightly around its bones that it had to have been the skin of somebody half its size. It was naked, as it was before, and roughly the same size as me, though extremely slender and dangerously underweight. That's all I could say about it. I only saw its midsection, torso and arms, but I think my mind would break if it saw anything else. I don't exactly know how I reacted. I saw it only a moment longer than last time and was choking on a bit of saliva at the back of my throat. My hands were desperately trying to find my chair's armrest to strangle, and my legs were desperately trying to skid my chair away across the wooden, glossy floor. Only a second passed until I could swallow and finally scream. Yet, my scream only lasted 1 or 2 seconds before my eyes started darting around the room to try and find it again. And once more it was gone. Vanished completely from sight. How could it just vanish when the direction it was moving in was towards the back of my room? Where did it go? Where could it go? I found myself glancing at the Xbox, yet this time it was off. But the feeling couldn't elude me that it was on, and it just soundlessly turned itself off upon me looking at it. Like, when I was scanning my room, it was on in the background, and I was too distracted by whatever else was in my room to notice it. I didn't know what else to do, but I had to catch my breath and steady my heartbeat. They were both running at 1000%. I thought for quite some time, maybe an hour or so, I don't know. I decided I should call it a day, and I went to bed, hoping my dreams would let me escape my hellish hallucinations. That's all I hoped they were. Hellish hallucinations. Do-ding. The sound of my console turning itself on woke me up. I didn't budge much at first. I was still half asleep. Do-do. The sound of my console turning itself off. This time I opened my eyes. It was pitch black and I had no inkling of the time. And I mean pitch black. My TV didn't have its standby light on. My other console supply bricks were dead and anything that could emit any light was consumed by the darkness. Do-ding. The light from the console was the only light which had power, even though it was unplugged. It came back on after about 10 seconds. Do-do. It turned off again after the same amount of time, and the room went back to black. With nothing else to focus on, I focused my eyes on the corner of my room. Do-ding. I noticed some movement in the corner. Like when you look out into the darkness and it looks like something is moving there, but then you notice nothing is moving there at all. Do-do. Focusing harder, it still looked that way. No matter how hard I would focus, the corner still looked occupied by something. Do-ding. Wait. Something looked as though it was coming out towards me. A figure. So faint, yet so present. Do-do. I tried to move, panicked now. For some reason, I couldn't. Was this sleep paralysis? I had never experienced sleep paralysis before then, but people can hallucinate things when having sleep paralysis. This was sleep paralysis, wasn't it? Or was I scared stiff? I slammed my eyes shut and put my whole body weight onto them. Do-ding. I was sure that thing was in front of me now. If I had opened my eyes, I would finally realize my delusions. Yet, I couldn't out of sheer fear. I just tried to sleep instead, to escape into my world of dreams. Any nightmare I could conjure would have been better than this. Do-do. Do-ding. Do-do. Do-ding. I have no idea how many repetitions of that sound went by before I would open my eyes again. The sound, which I would usually get a dopamine release every time I heard it, was then and will now and forever be just as daunting a noise as death spell. I had to face it. I opened my eyes. Do-ding. Nothing. My console was still on, but there was nothing I could see. The repeating sound of my console had stopped. It felt like I could finally breathe a fresh sigh of relief. That moment of joy was as blissful as water in a desert. It was over until it wasn't. I felt it first at my feet. Every nerve in my body was operating far above what was normal. The press against the foot of my bed, that of something leaning on it. Then it stepped onto the mattress, making the air within audibly gush very quietly. It felt like footsteps walking the length of the bed, just behind where I lay. It was so light, the same weight of shoes gently placed on the bed. Impossibly sparse for how big the entity was. Though, the thudding of its steps was still audible, only just. Thud. 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 It stopped at the head of the bed for a second, before finally slinking down into a lying position just behind me, forbidding any physical contact with me by only a few inches. My heart was leaping from my chest. But then I could feel its breathing. It was heavy, like a pig in heat. I could feel the moisture from its breath settle on the nape of my neck, and the strands of what I believed to be its thin hair whip softly against the new damp spot. Yet, once more, it sounded so quiet. So impossibly quiet for how heavy its breathing was. Though throughout this, I still could not move, proving it was fear I was under the power of, not mere sleep paralysis. My body had locked itself in place like my joints were filled with cement. Time passed before it was whispering something. I couldn't hear what it was saying at first. Its voice was so soft and silent. It was repeating something. My name. Every word sharpened its unseen tongue again and again. Sharper and sharper and sharper and sharper. Then finally, it spat out slowly. You owe me. You belong to me. Do-do. The room fell still, just as it should have been, in a single instant. The unplugged console was off, and all the other standby lights had power again, giving the room a light, artificial glow. I couldn't say how my body was. It had unlocked itself, but all my organs and joints felt weak. I felt the covers behind me. It was gone. I don't know how I slept after that, but I can say I most likely passed out. The next morning, I told work I felt a bit too ill to come in. That wasn't entirely false. I knew I had to do something. This entity wasn't going away. So I started with the obvious and considered calling the police. I would have told them that something was stalking me and that it had gotten into my room somehow, got into bed with me and left without leaving any trace of its presence behind. Oh, and that it was a fourth-dimensional pervert. That would have gotten me a nice, warm bed in the loony bin. I considered telling Mom, but though she is more likely to believe me, I don't want her to get involved. I have no idea how this thing operates. So, I decided that I need to know more about this thing. I plugged my Xbox back in and looked for Fiend, or who I believed was my invader from last night. I did expect I wouldn't find anything new, but the profile was gone. No, not deleted, just outright gone. The chats I had with Fiend, The redeem codes I had gotten from him, the fact I reported/blocked his profile, all of it, gone. I still had the games from Fiend, but that was it. So, I gave up on that idea and tried searching Google for this entity. This was also a dead end, however. I couldn't find any demons who operate like this being or any mythical creatures that capture humans through Xbox Live. I tried cryptids and, well, let's just say there are more pale, slender cryptids than I thought on the internet. Maybe it was how I was researching this thing? Though, I don't know how to search the internet for anything like this in the first place. I have had no luck finding anything out about this entity. But maybe I could evade this thing? Perhaps I could get far enough away from my console to lose it? It may have found me at work, but maybe it has a range limit. Though, this was assuming it is tied down to my console somehow. And I don't think I have it in me to run away. I would have to disappear, change my name, and everything that makes me who I am. I don't think I could make my mom go through that. I was running out of ideas. The best one I had was going back onto my Xbox to find out more about Fiend. That idea was going in the right direction, but I needed a new lead. Then I thought, maybe Microsoft could help me. I called their customer service line. From what I could find out from them, you can't delete an Xbox profile, only change your gamertag. Profiles don't just disappear, and that my story was crazy and I should be contacting the police or someone I knew who could help me. Though, when I was about to throw in the towel and hang up, the young woman who I was speaking to said something sympathetically along the lines of, "Look, have you shared your wish list with anyone?" I told her no and said, I saw the option, but I had no reason to select it. "Well, then I know your story is false," she replied, sounding more hopeful. "If this person was giving you games, then they would be doing it blindly. Even if you made your wish list public, no one should be able to see it unless you shared it with someone else before." "What?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "I had this issue with one of my friends before. The option should be left of the settings option on your wish list. When you select this and you have set your wish list to public, then it should give you the option to share your wish list with other people. Otherwise, no one should be able to view it." I froze when she said this. My mind was a mess. If what she said was true, then everything I had experienced up until then was supposed to be impossible. Hello. She spoke through the phone after I didn't respond. All I could do at that moment was tell her I had to go and hang up the phone. I looked over at my console and I was fairly sure it was looking back at me. Whatever I provoked, it was because of my Xbox. It had found me. I saw red. I picked up the console and as hard as I could, I threw it down. It smashed into the hard ground and I went to pick it up again and I threw it again and again and again. I did this until it looked more like a wrecked car than an Xbox One. I then opened the door to my closet and dumped it on the hard closet floor. I did feel a pang of pain because I did enjoy playing games on it. But I felt this had to be done. After that, I gave up and started writing this. I don't know what to conclude. I didn't learn anything from this. Something found my wish list on my Xbox. Through some unknown means, I cannot say how. It could have hacked me for all I know, bought me the games on it, and started to stalk me. What it is, I can only guess it came from somewhere beyond our reality and does not follow the same logic as we do. It came looking for somebody, maybe specifically me. Maybe I have something it wants. Though I don't know what it wants with me, I can say it does not have good intentions. That I can be sure of. I do think, however, this thing somehow bought me with the games it gave me. It gave me those games knowing I would take them without question, and when I did, this thing found me. If I didn't take those games, maybe it wouldn't have found me. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it would find me anyway. Please, whatever you do, do not make this same mistake. This happened to me, but this could still happen to anyone else. Maybe my situation is unique. Even if this is the case, supernatural or not, there will be someone out there that will want to use you. Someone with ill intentions that, if he ever gets the chance, will try to manipulate you. Offer you gifts, which you take without even meeting them first, and then that person will start demanding things from you. Favors, money, influence, or even your very body. The kindness of strangers cannot be blindly trusted, because they may want something in return. If only I had the chance to go out and socialize. Well, I did, but I didn't take it. And that just led me to this point. Perhaps you can't trust the kindness of strangers, but you could still go out into the world and meet people who you can trust. People who like you and respect who you are. People who you can see in the flesh and don't ask for anything in return. Because when you get to know a person, they stop being a stranger. I just hope you have the strength I never had. I think it's too late for me. I can hear my console power up from my closet. Despite the fact it doesn't look like an Xbox One anymore, it apparently still works fine. Listen to this at least. If you can find someone on Xbox with the GamerAg Fiend 900, then get away from it. It is not human and will only mean you will. I think it is calling to me. I must face it. I don't know why, but I feel like I need to face it. I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't. I've got to go. Fourth story. This story was shared by you/aggressive City 4453. The butcher shop in town has dark secret. I live in a small town with a population of 1,000 or so. Everyone knows everyone and most all are overly nice people. I didn't find this strange as most small towns stuck together as a community. There are 5 businesses in this town: a gas station, a restaurant, 2 bars, and a butcher shop that had just opened in town this year. Everybody loves the meat from there, and it's at such a great price you can't go wrong. It was a Friday night, around 11 p.m., and I seen police lights at the edge of town. A horrible accident had occurred as 2 linemen fixing power lines had gotten electrocuted and their charred bodies laid lifeless on the ground below the power lines. The police were first to leave as after they got their details they took off. The ambulance hadn't arrived yet, as it had to come from another city over an hour away. Only a man in a bloody white apron stood out in the darkness, crouched down looking at the bodies, and it was then I realized it was Mark the Butcher. I watched quietly out of sight, wondering what the hell he was doing. Did he know the guys? Was it friends? Family? All these thoughts kept running through my mind. Then I saw it. He took a hunting knife from his pocket and started carving big chunks of flesh from the charred bodies. I rubbed my eyes as I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He stopped, looked around, then started hiding the slabs of flesh by a nearby bush. After several minutes of slicing most all meat from the bodies, there wasn't much left but bone. I couldn't watch much more as I was so scared he would see me. Then he moved in a creature-like way, but super fast, like a hunched-over zombie from 28 Days Later. Super fast, he zipped right by where I was and was gone. I went home feeling dread, trying to come to terms with what I had seen. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, curiosity had gotten to me, so I had to go see if the slabs were still hidden off under the bushes. As I drove up, I seen crime scene yellow tape was all around the power line and the bodies were gone. I walked over to where I seen him stash the flesh, and it was all gone too. Only blood remnants remained, and it looked like it left a trail off towards the woods on the outskirts of town. I followed the trail the best I could before it went cold. I had to find out what happened to the slabs of meat. Did the butcher come back and make it seem like an animal did this? Did an animal or creature do this? I should have stayed and watched longer. I had to know, so I went by the butcher shop, parked, and observed for several hours. I saw nothing but the usual customers coming and going. I decided to go home and take a nap as I was short on rest from the whole situation. I had a terrible dream. Mark the Butcher was in it. He was chopping up human remains and making them into steaks, burgers, you name it. He was a bloody mess, and he had me tied up, saying, "Now you know my secret, you will become human meat." I woke up in a cold sweat. Thank God that was a dream, but was it a sign? Have all the townsfolk, including myself, been eating human remains? Is that why he has the best prices in the state on red meat? I asked myself. I gotta get to the bottom of this. I skipped work the next day as I thought to myself, I need to know what's going on. It all seems like a bad dream, and I haven't woke up yet. But I know what I saw and how Mark ran that night, like something not from this earth. Like a cryptid of some sort in a human body. Whatever he is, he must be stopped. I went to the butcher shop again, only to see that it was closed on a weekday. How strange. I tried to break in, knowing it was wrong, but I knew something wasn't right. It was an older warehouse building, and in this small town with little to no crime, nobody had alarms. I grabbed my ladder from home and climbed up to the roof. I searched around and found a possible way in through the air duct. It was a commercial-sized system, so rather large, I had no problem climbing down into the passageway. It smelled like death so bad I dry heaved a few times before I made it part of the way through. Then I broke through and fell a good 15 feet. Gasping for air I didn't want a breath as I was in the meat locker. I seen the horror that I had imagined. 2 policemen and a paramedic were hanging upside down with pools of blood below them as their throats had been cut nearly clean off to the spine. They stunk like they had been there for a while. Expressionless were the bodies. I then heard a door and a weird grunting and shrieking noise. I ran and hid behind a stack of crates. Fear was filling my body now as I didn't know what to expect. Bursting through the door, there was Mark, all freakish looking and making animal-like noises as he hobbled quickly over to the bodies. I was a nervous wreck. If he finds me in here, I am surely dead. He started sawing the bodies' limbs from the bodies one by one, throwing only the heads, hands, and feet in a black plastic bag. Then he started tasting the meat raw. I almost puked as he was making ravenous creature noises as he was feasting on the remains. He then started grinding the meat through a hamburger grinder and was packaging it and throwing it in the freezer. I didn't know how much more I could take. His eyes were all black. He had blood all over him. He was acting very strange. Then finally he left the room. I heard more tools grinding, cutting, chopping in the next room. Now was my chance to find a way out. The shit luck, there was only one way in and out. So I was gonna have to stay until he left to go unnoticed. It's been hours now. It's finally quiet. I never heard anyone leave. Trembling in fear, I crawl out from behind the crates and make my way to the front entrance door. I creep as quietly as possible and I still hear nothing. I push the door slowly open, peeking out in the dark front of the shop. The coast looks clear, so I decide to make a run for the front door. As I do, I notice a pale white-skinned person out of the corner of my eye. It starts to growl. I run full speed towards the front door, crashing into it. The glass breaks. I'm cut all over, bleeding, barely conscious. As I hear something sprinting toward me from behind. It sounds like it's from hell. I gathered myself and stumbled outside, calling for help. But it's 2 a.m. and nobody is around. I start to run best I could up the street. Looking back, I see Mark, deformed, hunched over, making dreadful sounds as he starts running at me. Then I see a man on his porch waving me over. He has a gun. It appeared, and he pointed it right at me, shouting, "Don't move." I put my hands up, stating there is something after me, but as I turned around to see where Mark was, he was gone. Trying to explain myself, the guy got on the phone with the police, not taking his eyes off me, gun still pointed at my chest. Then out of nowhere, the man was tackled and tore to shreds. It was Mark. I took that as my chance to get away. I hobbled home, not looking back, made it to my front door and hurried inside. I grabbed a bag full of clothes out of my house, got in my pickup, and took off fast as I could without looking back. I moved out of state, leaving everything behind. It has been 6 months since I left. I have browsed the web on that small town to check the status on things, and in just the short 6 months I've been gone, that little town has been completely erased. Unsolved disappearance of the whole city. It's been abandoned and is now a restricted area. 5th story. This story was shared by you/archives. I work for a company that studies cursed places. There's a place they call the House of Tongues. So it all started with a box of bees. It was deep within the stores of the company, in the depths where only the bravest dare enter. Well, that, and literally about everyone with a basic level 1 access code. And in the depths one could find a box of bees, all dead and devoid of any color. Bees that had once nested in the suburbs of North Carolina, in an odd house that had always stood there. They called it the House of Tongues. My name is Canopy Hydrangea. I recover cursed artifacts, explore haunted places, and report back the information needed to the people I work for. The company then arranged what has to be done to remove these blemishes from the world. If it isn't possible, we make sure the evil of cursed artifacts and bizarre places doesn't make its way to the general public. But sometimes, it's important to leak a report or two to the unsuspecting public. Makes for a good warning, and this particular file is one of many that must be known. So, team, I began, as we sat around an old fireplace, in the bakery turned cover for our base of operations. What has the company found us today? Rainey, my key assistant, tuned up the old projector and pressed a few buttons. Kyron faked a yawn, and my scroll keeper, Cypress, laughed. We all stopped laughing when the image of a dead dog, bloodied and covered in long, piercing slashes emerged. So let's talk about the House of Tongues. Rainey began, changing the slide to an image of a remodeled, but still old-looking house. This house was built back in the 1620s, and I'll cut Rainey's exposition by a lot here. Many unnecessary details, but details that kept us intrigued and interested. The house, built in 1627, was built by a migrating priest and his family. Initially, it was supposed to be a small cabin, a little summer place for rest and meditation. This all changed when, according to local mythology, the priest was offered a deal by an odd man in white and black. He called himself the night merchant, and the priest gave up his cabin, and within 7 days and 7 nights a grand, expansive house replaced it. The licking began to take place nearly a year after that. Not much is known from the priest's records. As Rainey tells it, his words were deemed heresy and burned. But we do know that the house, named Adager Place, changed hands over the centuries, though most records were lost to time. The more important records come after the end of the Great War. 1927. A family, the Bakers, moves into Adager Place, now remodeled to fit it with a little town that popped up from the economic boom. 1928. William Baker's youngest daughter reports a sensation at night, a strange rough feeling, as if she were being licked by a cat. Cats do not approach Adager Place. In fact, the house does not seem to welcome all but human life. Cats who approach it go mad and disappear. The family dog Baker brings along is found on the street, eviscerated by long, piercing slashings the police could never explain. 3 months later, the sightings begin. William Baker goes out one day to investigate mewling noises behind the house. The entire backyard is trashed. Pots have gone flying. Dirt has been dug. The entire garden has been uprooted. Darting around the corner are monsters. Small, slender things, and ashen white with bodies as thin as sticks. Their bones show, the muscles pulse. But strangest of all are their heads, large and muscular, adorned with small horns that dot it, in 2 icy states as deep blue like the sea. Terrified and confused, William goes back to the house to fetch a rifle. When he goes back, though, they vanished. The noises continue for the rest of the year, but always gone before he can take a good, clear look. But something else, far more chilling and incredible, has appeared. One of his 2 daughters have vanished. Both company and government records show that the Bakers only had 1 daughter. And yet, in the cold winter of 1928, William Baker finds himself mad, shocked as he begins to remember a daughter that never existed. An older daughter, he remembers. But try as he might, he can't picture her face, nor find any certificates, legal evidence she had existed. But in the halls of the house she does. There's a bedroom with things that aren't supposed to be there. A bed, posters, and books, all evidence a teenage girl had once lived there. But on paper, she does not exist. And neither does she exist in the minds of anyone else. His wife and only daughter do not acknowledge the extra room. His neighbors seem to avoid him. 1929. At night, they come. They appear as shadows in the windows, peering in with small hands, large, blue eyes. And then they open a circular, razor-like mouth, and a long tongue with teeth emerges, licking the window and gently cracking it. William takes his rifle and journeys outside. The creatures seem to taunt him, gracefully avoiding his gunshots, leading him deeper and deeper into the woods that were not there when he bought the place. When he realizes, all too late, that his fences have ceased to exist, it's too late. The creatures are gone. And behind him, in the large house called Adager Place, there are screams. When William Baker finally finds the house again, everything is silent. His wife and child are gone. The creatures sit cross-legged and wait, tongues eerily lolling out. He shoots them, but the bullets always seem to miss. By dusk, they are gone. Legally, William Baker's wife and 2 kids do not exist. He spent the rest of his life telling the same tale in a mental asylum. He also claimed the creatures followed him there, always peeking in through the bars and windows. He is found near death one day, bizarre lacerations and slashings. A man comes by, wrapped in shadow, and gives him a buzzing box. Bees. And the creatures never appeared. Wait, Chiron cut in? You're saying that bees, of all things, stop these? Tongue aliens? Rainey nodded, almost in disbelief of the story herself. Whoever gave him those bees knew how to deal with them, she continued. However it works, it worked. William got out the asylum and lived the rest of his life as a beekeeper. Cypress guess. Rainey nodded. So if this case is closed, why has the company handed it over to us? Rainey sighed in disappointment. As I was saying, she remarked, teeth clenched, the bees have failed. A slide displayed thousands of dead bees around the house. In 1937, two company agents bought the house and bombarded the place with beehives. Beehives that have remained ever since, cared for by a gardener. She paused and switched it over to another angle. Last week, the gardener vanished, only remembered by a single surviving company agent. Any guesses as to what they want us to do? I nodded and gleefully raised my hand. They want us to clean it up. The bees, and I tried to think of the name, tongue aliens. Tunleans, if you will. That generated some laughter. Cypress, Chiron, you two are my containment experts. Cypress revealed a drawing on an iPad, already working on a spell. Chiron shrugged. The new air assault guns are ready. I looked at Rainey in anticipation, wondering if there was more. That's about it. There's a similar story that happened in 1932, but same old, same old. She paused, thinking. We should also watch for artifact hunters. Sources suggest Lorino's crew may be looking to seize one of the aliens for themselves. I practically growled. Lorino and his crew were a gang of villains that dabbled in selling cursed artifacts and cryptids to shady dealers. Cryptid smuggling? Rainey nodded. Cypress noted this as well. If they show, boss, we'll take them out this time. By the next hour, we'd prepared all we'd needed. We stood by a large, symbol-adorned mirror and waited. Cypress chanted some ancient, long-forgotten poetry, and the mirror changed to a quiet street. Rainey stepped through, then Cypress, Chiron, and me, and then we were face to face with Adager Place. I felt a sense of great discomfort. Do you dash? I muffled my ears, suddenly starting to hurt. Had that? It was the sound of bees, buzzing all at once in a cursed, malevolent death knell. I screamed in pain and fell to the floor. Cypress caught me as I fell and read off of their phone. Infected beast of, unholy, I drifted in and out as the ghost swarm dazed me, begone. And it was over, and my vision cleared. The house is powerful, I murmured. I don't think we're just dealing with the tongue things, I stammered, still dizzy. I reached into the ether, more than one entity. Chiron looked a bit worried. Should we call for backup? Nah, I replied. We can take it. We enter the house, the buzzing still in the back of my mind. As told, a swarm of bees lay dead around the place, and with every step we took a loud crunch emanated, echoing around the house. Besides that, in the deep fear we were all beginning to feel, there was nothing. All the events happened at night, Rainey reminded. And it is dash. Drip drop. Something red and thick fell onto my hand. It was blood. Drip drop. More began to fall from the ceiling, a river of blood pouring from cracks. It was cold and seemed to pulse in time, as if alive. Rainey wrote into a journal, then collected a sample. Weird. It's not a threat. Chiron nervously pointed his weapon around. Well, I don't like it. Well, go on and air assault it, I told. I don't like it either. Chiron nodded, reached into his bag, and found a sphere of white. We averted our eyes as he lit the fuse, tossing it up into the air and exploding in light, spraying us with salt and fine iron, enchanted so that it would not hurt us. The ghost blood stopped and fell to the ground, evaporating into ash. One phenomena neutralized, Rainey noted. We continued onwards until the house decided to shift itself, creaking, trying to spin its halls so that we would emerge back where we came from. We were at the kitchen, then it would creak, and the door we opened. Back up front, I murmured. I'll handle it, Cypress offered, already beginning to chant. The place let out a sigh, and things were restored. It won't hold, though. And then they finally appeared. Little deformed things. Pale bodies, large heads, large, bulbous eyes. They appeared in the corner of my eye at first, though as we ventured deeper into the house they seemed to dart here and there. Chiron attempted to shoot them, but they seemed ever evading, always just out of reach. Rainey noted them and sketched the beings. And as we got deeper, the sound of the dead bees began to crescendo. And other noises. The sound of screams, of pleas for help. The house seemed to go on forever, unfolding, each layer of the house seemingly older and more arcane from the last. In front, it had seemed like a remodeled house. Inside, it was at least 30 years old, and in each subsequent hall, room it got older and older. In the distance we saw something dark and rocky. That's a cave, isn't it? I asked. Cypress magic was of no use either. Wait, they paused as we reached the cave. The shadows flickered within, and the creatures seemed to whisper in the darkness. He spun around and gasped. I think we've been tricked. I turned to see a wall. A solid wall of paint and brick. That wasn't there the last time I dashed. I screamed as something lashed out, cutting me. Ack. A tongue drew into the darkness, sharp. Lights. Rainey shouted, flicking on a lantern. The electric device sputtered and failed, illuminating about a dozen tongue things in the darkness, leaping out into shadow. Damn it. Chiron began to fire aimlessly as more and more tongues darted in and out, slashing us. Cypress, boss, solution? Cypress read off their phone, and a ball of light emerged in front of us, yet the darkness still remained. The wall behind us began to move, pushing us forward. The magician yelped and tendrils of paint burst from the wall, ensnaring him. Help me. I flicked a knife open and him loose. We were being forced forwards. The wall behind us seemed ever fleshy now, tendrils of red dripping limbs reaching out at us. In front, tongues lashed out, cutting us up, one by one. But we continued to push, running forwards and firing as the wall of flesh behind us forced us into the darkness. Look, I shouted. A building. There was something there. Ancient and carved from stone. The ruins of an ancient temple that seemed just like the house. Statues of the tongue things lay in wait, eerily inviting us in. The wall picked up speed, and we ran into the ruin, just as the wall crashed into its entrance, locking us within. A flash, then black goo. I got one. Chiron cheered, stepping over and picking it up. It whined, still alive, and a tongue lashed out, only for Chiron to sever it. They can be killed. Rainey was studying the walls of the temple. The death of the creature had scared them off, for now, at least. This place is old. Like, really old. I've never seen this. She gestured to the arcane symbols on the walls, language before. Cypress knelt down next to two skeletons, little marks of teeth all over. Must be the bakers. Around us were more skeletons, all marked by small incisions. Most were ancient, but some were all too new. A fresh corpse even lay in a corner, just a few days old. I looked at it. I recognized the corpse as a black market artifact dealer. Serves you right. Company agents dash, Rainey gasped. A team, just like us, lay dead on the floor, recently deceased. I thought we were the first to come here in a long time. This place, I remembered, eats people. Memories. HQ probably sent them and forgot they existed. A scuttling came from deeper within, and the sound of bees suddenly stopped. An unceasing quiet came next, and suddenly I preferred the bees to the quiet. I think, Cypress announced, I can get us out of here. And then they reached into their backpack and brought out, of all things. Is that a cat? Rainey puzzled. Did you actually dash? I supposed it would come in handy, Cypress confessed. Plus, it isn't mine, and I've got to return it. Enough, guys, I ordered. Cypress, how does this work? A glint in there I came now. Well, they began. We know that the house hates animals, right? We nodded. Let's see why. And with that, Cypress released the cat, and it trotted softly down a hall, deep into the temple. We followed, up until the cat stopped before a chamber, stone gates warding us off. I opened the gates, and then we saw it. This was some sort of congregation room. A grand hall filled with stone benches, ancient symbols of old religion, and thousands of the creatures, all sleeping, save for a dozen or so chattering and climbing the walls. Look, there, Cypress pointed to light in the corner of the hall, where creatures popped in and out. Daylight. A way out, I murmured. Just have to get through all of this first, Cryan pointed out. Not necessarily, Cypress started. I'll be right back. Cypress returned a moment later with the corpse of the tongue creature, then inscribed several symbols into it with a knife. They lit up, and we walked into the haldol, Cypress leading us forwards. The creatures began to wake, jumping beside us and sniffing the air. I've disguised us as a mass of them, Cypress explained. Let's see how long this holds. The creatures ignored us, returning to hibernation. I observed the hall as we journeyed closer and closer to daylight. Statues of goat-like things watched us, tall and ancient, yet oddly familiar. The creatures tended to the place, lighting candles and even managing a small garden towards the back. They did not construct the place, but whoever did left them to tend for it, to keep it sacred, safe. Oh no, Cypress murmured. The spell's worn off. That's when the creatures began to shift, paying attention to us once again. Cypress gulped, found the cat and threw it. Run. And so we did, towards daylight. The creatures lashed out at us. The cat seemed to distract them, pawing its way through the little beasts. I need rope, Cypress commanded, just as the light shone above us. An opening seemed so far away. Here. I tossed it, and Cypress reached out and, with ancient art, floated it up. Climb. I shouted, already beginning to do so. Go. And as we climbed, the creatures did so too, leaping from the walls to seize us. Chiron fired and Cypress did strange art. I slashed them away, and they fell to an ever-growing pile below us. 3 were on the rope below us. Take this. Chiron slashed the rope, cutting them loose. I rose into the light first, pressing open a grate and helping Cypress up. Rainy came next, then Chiron. I threw the rope over and shut the grate back down. Still, they stuck to the walls, still chasing us. I found an explosive, strapped it to the grate and ran. A boom came behind us, and no opening remained. We were in the backyard. I think, I murmured, I'm going to submit this place for immediate destruction. And that was that. The place had been surveyed. Our job was done. We'd done all we could and found what we needed. We couldn't stop them on our own. A request was made, and the last time I heard of the place, it had both been burned, collapsed, and creatures seized for further study. Another day was done. Another bizarre place kept under control. If you know a place marked by evil, let us handle it. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.